So, launching into it, a bit about Anistic. So it's about 3 slides on who we are and what we do. So we design and build ground-up metering systems, energy management systems. So we've got manufacturing facilities in the UK and in China, where we do the higher volume stuff. And we focus just on the industrial space. So that's offices, factories, any sort of retail premises, do a lot of schools, anything with a businessy or commercial focus. And our speciality really is probably down in multiple units of SMEs or SMEs themselves. So it's either, for example, people like Pret-a-Manger in the UK who are not an SME, but they have lots of shops which operate like SMEs. So either small company or group of small companies together into an organization. We tend to provide different services, such as, for example, the M&V, so the before and after service that we launched 2 months ago has been very popular. Lots of people have taken it up, so that, for example, we can go in with lighting retro refits and do a measurement 2 weeks before a intervention on the LED rebulbing, then 2 weeks afterwards, and then give a report back. So the M&V services we provide are popular. We do a lot of AM&T. So, for example, if you've got a big building and you kind of want to know what's going on with it, where the energy is being used, again, we can provide services for that. And that's all based around our AMI, our advanced meter infrastructure products, which typically are wireless, typically are encrypted, typically are mesh networking, and we've had those out in the market now since 2008. So it's pretty well developed and pretty well bedded in. Typical solution for us would look like this. So the various wireless components there, we sell different types of meters for different jobs. So, for example, fiscal meters for high accuracy and billing. We'll be talking a lot about those today. Distribution board meters are cheaper, so we like that. 16 different inputs, so that makes them very cost effective, slightly less accurate, but still pretty good meters. A range of plug-in meters, and then a range to interface onto products like gas and water. We've got a lot coming out in June on the automation side. So we have a major new hardware release called IBEMS, Intelligent Building Energy Management Systems. And that brings us into the realm of control. And we have a number of Modbus compatible products being launched to our channel partners in June, probably ready to hit the shelves for general release around September, October time. Some of our customers, the great and the good, really. And as I say, we've got customers all over the world. We've certainly got a number of people throughout the world helping us. And our customers range from the very large, we do a couple of governments, embassies, all that sort of stuff, right down to sort of smaller premises. We typically don't go under anybody spending less than about £10,000 a year on energy. Our systems are suitable for that minimum level and above, really. Anything lower than that, and you'll try to find that our costs outweigh the benefits we get. Typically, with a system with us, our customers who use our systems on the published case studies save 38%. So if you take all of the case studies that we publish, you get an average of the savings that they make, both using our stuff and the other sort of bits and bobs they're doing at the same time. That's the kind of saving they get. Brilliant. Okay, so let's move on now. Talk about the tenant billing part. So tenant billing is really it's a way of occupancy, people who own properties. So be it landlords, be it anybody with a multi-occupancy site, such as retail space, business parks, etc. Taking an existing electricity bill. See if I can just turn my phone off. Try that. Anybody with an electricity bill with multiple tenants, splitting that bill up into multiple bills that they pass on to the people in their establishment. So, for example, if you've got a marina or you've got a science park, business park, etc., it's very good for that. We've also heard about the systems being used in places like hotels and caravan parks. What you can do there, for example, imagine the caravan park has a central bill of, for example, £17,000 a month electricity, and imagine they had, for example, 100 caravans. They could just apportion that out directly and just split it all down on an equal basis. Everybody gets a bill, for example, of 1/100th of that. Alternatively, you can put in the metering system that we provide, and from there you can then actually give them a precise invoice at the end of the month for what they're using. Sometimes people use it as a way of just recouping costs. That's fine, so no problems there. Also, others will add a margin on so that they use it as some type of profit center, either to make money explicitly or to look more at covering central costs. So say, for example, you've got an office block with a large atrium area. What you could do in the atrium area is take the costs that all the tenants bill, mark them up by, for example, 20% to cover the communal spaces, as say largely restaurants, toilet areas, service areas, and things like that. So that's what tenant billing's about. In the UK, I think it's not got a huge penetration. I think because of the complexity. Sometimes you do get people walking around with a pencil and paper making notes about who's using what at what time. But the automated systems are not that commonly used at the moment. I think there's a big opportunity there for expansion. Let's take a look at some of the ways we do this. So, for example, the hardware. Well, what you need for any multi-occupancy system in terms of tenant billings, you need a good feed of accurate information back about what's actually being used. There's different ways of doing that. Our preferred method is using a fiscal meter, which is one of our very accurate meters. It takes 187,000 readings per second, and adds up your electricity bill from that sort of reading base. That passes it all back into the cloud, and the cloud then takes it back to our servers, where the servers chew it down and form it into quarter-hour blocks. And the quarter-hour blocks of information are then used as the basis of the billing system that it then generates the invoice out to the clients. Let's take a look first at some of the hardware that we use, and there's different options here. I've shown you the basic one to start with, but you can then have some different options depending on whether you want a cheaper system or a mid-compliant, etc., etc. And I'll come on to those later. But the basic bits I'll be talking about, I've got a diagram coming up with loads of sort of squares and circles on it. And really you're talking about basic components for us are the utility meter. Well, that's provided by the utility provider, so the electricity company. And the electricity company typically provides 1 meter per establishment. If you take, for example, a caravan park, it would be unusual for the utility to provide an electricity meter for each caravan, but they probably will provide 1 meter for the entire caravan park. We also use a couple of other bits on the next diagram. One is a concentrator, which is we call it a smart energy controller or smart energy controller light or GPRS. That takes the information from up to 50 of our meters, the sub-3 fiscal meters, consolidates it down and squirts it up to the site so that you don't have to have individual communications built into each meter. You can just use these concentrators to cut down your communication costs. Then, of course, you've got the meters, which is the, as I say, the actual hardware that goes on, for example, per caravan. You'd put in some form of fiscal meter or semi-fiscal meter to look at the use on the individual plot-by-plot basis. Putting those together, as I say, they're the bits we use, the utility meter, concentrator, and the fiscal meter. You get a diagram of use, something like that. So each of the blue blobs is a tenant, and each tenant, as you can see, has got some form of meter associated with them. And the meters for us are wireless, they're encrypted, and they're mesh networking, and I'll show you an example of that in a second. But the meters monitor and record the electricity being used by each tenant, and then report it back to the concentrator. The concentrator then sends it via the VPN back to the Energy Manager Online. So that's the basic setup. To look at it, I don't know whether you can see my mouse point from here, but you've got the utility meter at the start. That's provided by the electricity company. You've got the fiscal meters, one per tenant, one per plot, one per shop, one per room, however way you want to look at it. And then these concentrators, which pull the information from these meters and send it back up to the site. That's the basic layout of what we do. Let's take a look at how that might be deployed, for example, in a shopping mall. Very good use of our technology there. Now, this is a typical shopping mall diagram kindly provided by Google. So thank you very much for that, Google. And you can see here, you've got on the left-hand side in this area here, you've got the main utility meter that will come in. Could be one, could be two, could be three, depending on the size of the shopping mall and its power use. But you've got 1, 2, or 3 utility meters coming in. And then on the inside, to get tenant billing, what we do is put one of our fiscal meters onto each plot. In this case, each retail unit within the complex. All of the fiscal meters talk to each other and then talk via the concentrators back to the Energy Manager Online, which collects all the information, does all the billing. And what we've done here, what we've recommended in this installation, is to put 5 of them in, 1 in each corner and 1 in the middle. And the 5 in each corner, 1 in the middle, mean that individual meshes are formed between these meters, so that you don't have one meter on the far side of the shopping meter trying to talk to the concentrator over the other side. Yeah. So that's the general play of things. If you look at the mesh that's formed, each meter will talk not just to the concentrator, but talk to each other. So it provides a very resilient mesh. I started drawing it here, but you can get the gist. So, for example, each of the meters down in the bottom left-hand corner will talk to the concentrator in the bottom left-hand corner, and each of the top left, the red ones in the red, etc. And these meshes are very stable, very resilient. If something changes, so for example, a shop puts in a new fitting and the wireless signal can't get from one place to another, the signal will reroute around the blockage instantly. It's a dynamic system. It sorts itself out on a 10-second by 10-second basis. And by doing that, you can get the information fed back to the Energy Manager Online. All the stuff we do is encrypted, so it's 128-bit AES encrypted, so it's secure, and it's very low power wireless. So typical life you can get out of a battery here for one of our systems, a single AAA cell will last around about a year to a year and a half. Maximum we've ever heard using our technology from calculations, admittedly not real life, it's not been going that long, but is over 10 years on a pair of AA batteries. So it's very, very low power, very low bandwidth, encrypted, and therefore it's suitable for mass deployment in public areas such as this.
Sorry, Daryl, just a quick question on the battery power.
Sure.
Which meter uses batteries?
None of the meters use batteries. They're all wired, but my point was that they're so low power that if you were to run them from a battery, you would get a very long life from them.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's look now at some of the software. So that's the hardware, basically. To cut a long story short, you need 1 meter per plot or per caravan or per shop. The meters talk by the concentrators back to the software. So let's take a look now at some of the software functions we've got to support tenant billing within the Energy Manager Online. Now, this is where I break out into this web page here. Now, can you guys see that? Is that okay? Does that all come up?
Yeah, that's fine, Daryl.
Yeah, great. Okay. So this is an ISTIC. Let's log into the Energy Manager Online. And what we're going to be doing is looking at our own office here. And our own office, this is real life, so this is with the people around me. And let's have a look at some of the functions we've got to support tenant billing. First thing you need to do is set up some of the basics. So from the home menu into company preferences here, and you notice there's a tab over here called Tenant Billing. This is the area that you can type in just the basic information that you want on the invoices that you send out to your clients. So company address, tax rate, and anything special you want on the bottom. Okay, so that's stage one. Stage two, you've obviously got the meters themselves here. I'll just show you some of the meters that we run in this office here. That's how it looks today. So let's assume that you've got the meters already installed and the concentrators in place, etc. What you can then do is you can go into the settings function here, click on the tenant billing button, and that will provide an area here where you can set up which tenants you have or which invoicing groups you want to receive invoices. So say, for example, you had a retail mall with 20 different shops in it, then what you'd have down here is you'd have 20 different entries in this tenant billing area. So let's set a new one up now. Let's just imagine that we want to actually bill me for my usage on my desk. What we'd do is we click on Add a New Group, type it in, and let's do Daryl's Desk Invoice here. Some basic details, like this. But you can put in here customer numbers, reference numbers, etc. And that set a new group up. So here it is. You can see it on the basic sort of list of invoicing groups. What we now need to do is tell the system. Who's got a Craig? Any chance you could turn your microphone off? Just mute it. Is that possible?
Sure.
Yeah. Cheers. It's got some feedback. So, and now we need to associate the meter with that. So what we do is we click on Daryl's desk here, and we get to choose then which of the meters that we have is linked onto my account or linked onto Daryl's desk. And there is one cunningly called Daryl's desk here that is linked to my desk. So let's include that meter in this tenant billing invoice. So all of the energy use being recorded by that meter will be billed to Daryl's desk invoice. Notice that if you've got a big installation, say you've got, for example, a major retail store with 3 or 4 meters, you can choose as many invoices and many meters down here as you want, and then they'll all feed through to the same invoice. Okay, so if you've got big installations, it still comes with those. Down at the bottom, we press save. Oh, lots of meters in our office. You probably won't have as many as this. So press save, and that's that invoicing group now set up. So that's all you need to do on the configuration side of the groupings. So as I say, you had 20 retail units or 20 caravans, you had 20 entries on the screen. Let's look then at what you do to actually produce the reports. So you go to reports, and you go to invoices, and this is the actual tenant billing invoice production side of things. Now what we do here is you can select which tenant you want to invoice. So in my case it's Daryl's desk, which month, so let's do it for example last month, and then what the tariff details that you want to use are for your tenant. There's 3 options. Basic flat, so you might say to your tenant, I'll tell you what it's, for example, it's 10.41 pence per kilowatt hour, and I think that reflects into local currency for people as they use the system in different areas. You can use the day-night weekend rate system, and the times for that you can set up here, or you could use usage bands. So you can say, like, for the first 100 kilowatt hours it's this, for the next 100 kilowatt hours it's that, etc. You can set these bands up. Let's leave it on day-night weekend. To print the invoice at the end of the month, you just select which month you need it for, and I know, Dean, that you want it done on an hourly basis. I'm sure we can sort something out there. But select which of the months you want, select which invoice you want to generate, and then press Generate Invoice. That will then take the energy use recorded by the meters and produce the invoice from the energy used by those meters. It's stored in month order down here, so April 2013 will be all of the invoices you've ever generated. And the system's got a good audit trail, so that if, for example, you wanted to issue an invoice for my desk. But for some reason you type the details wrong, or you get in a system where you put the wrong rate in, whatever. It keeps the previous invoice and just generates a new invoice on top of the previous one, so it's stored. So if I click here, you can see you've got some invoices here with the letter B, C, and then the next one I generate will be D, and then E, etc. So all of the invoices that we ever generate are stored. And to get the invoices, let's go back into it. Let's just have a look here. This is invoice 2013, April. Click, and there's the invoice generated there. So that invoice then you can then, as a PDF, email off to your customer, the tenant involved, and it's a pure fiscal record of what's going on. So it shows the amount of energy used, the number of kilowatt hours, what rate that was at, the total, and then the tax rate that you set up earlier in there. Down here at the bottom of the invoice, you can also see the customizable details that you put in for to appear on the bottom of each invoice. And at the top, you can see the address details that you typed into the company preferences screen right at the start. So very flexible, very simple. There's a lot in there, but it works very well, and you can generate a large number of invoices for a large number of tenants very easily. Let me take you back now to some of the other things. There's probably only another couple of slides to look at tenant billing. But some people want to look at tenant billing and say, look, I like the look of that, but a fiscal meter costs about £100 a time, is a bit expensive if you've got a lot of tenants. Can I do it a cheaper way? The answer is yes, you can. If you want to, you don't have to use a fiscal meter. You can use any of our meters. So, for example, one of the SM16D semi-fiscal meters gives you a very good cost-effective alternative. It gives you 16 channels, whereas a sub-3 only has 3. That's one alternative. It also fits very nicely inside a distribution board. So if you're looking at installation, elegance really, and sort of simplicity of installation, the 16D does fit nicely into the board, and it works well if all of your electricity feeds come back to the same place. If you've got a very distributed system, you might be just as well to use the sub-3s. So you sacrifice a bit of accuracy, but you get a lot cheaper solution by doing that. Another alternative is the Modbus meters that we sell. Now these are MID certified. MID is the European Metering Instrument Directive. It's only applicable in Europe. So if you're outside Europe, and not a lot of people on this webinar are outside of Europe, it doesn't make the blindest bit of difference to you. But in Europe, they say that you should use a MID-compatible meter to do the data collection part. And so we sell 2 of those. We sell BBSP MID1 and MID3, which are the single-phase and 3-phase MID meters. The problem is, though, that they're RS485, so they need a wire running between them. Sometimes that's okay. So, for example, if you're doing a new build, that's not a problem. But in retrofit situations, it's not as easy to run the wire as it is to use the wireless system. So that's available. Costs are around about the same. There's not a huge difference in the cost between the mid meters and the non-mid meters. But this wireless aspect does mean that the installation is slightly slower to perform. That's about it. That's tenant billing in a nutshell.